Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Mosquito, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I interject with something, housekeeping really quickly that I failed to do on
Sure.
my presentation? Mr. Chaddock, I see that you were in a garage. I just want to be sure that you're alone. If and when someone does come into the garage, which can happen on Zoom, if you will just let us know who has entered the garage and wait for them to leave before you resume your testimony, I would appreciate that.
Yep, you'll know if they walk in.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep, but yeah, nobody should.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Mosquito, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So first off, how was your relationship with Bubba when you first met him?
When he was less than a year old?
Yes.
It was great. I mean, I got to raise a kid without having a kid. So, I didn't have a kid before that. And it was just nice to help him learn and have fun with him and teach him to walk and talk and eat and all the things you do with a kid. And I was really happy. Yeah. I was just really happy to be there for him and help him. And, I love kids. So.
How was the relationship between Bubba and his dad when we would do the co-parenting for pickups and drop-offs, for exchanging of him?
How was their relationship?
Yeah, how was their relationship?
Or what?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
What was the relationship like with Bubba and his dad when he would come back from going to his dad's house?
It was fine. There were, he would come back and he would just talk about whatever happened, I guess. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, I guess.
Did he act out or have any fits or act out at all?
Yeah, he would. He would talk about being disciplined. He would. His relationship with whatever siblings he had, and then the other kids, would affect his behavior when he got back. So, he could be mellow for a week at our house, and then go over there and come back kind of hyper and just kind of, which is, it's good to be around kids, but he would just kind of come back with different attitudes, and then different attitudes from the discipline that, just the discipline from his parents or grandparents or whoever had him. Yeah, I don't know.
Can you tell me about the incident of October 8th? What happened on that day?
Michael had dropped Bubba off on the 7th, picked him up on the 8th, and then come back shortly after picking him up. He brought him to stay with us for a day so that we could just see him, because he'd had him for a couple weeks while you gave birth. And so the 8th was 9 days after you gave birth. Sorry, Sam Mosquito gave birth. And then he demanded, I saw that his truck was outside before he'd come to the door. So I went to the door, anticipating him coming to the door. And I opened the door, and he said, "Go get Angel." And I said, "What do you mean, go get Angel?" And he said, "Go get Angel." And what I said to him at that moment was, "Why don't you," I said, I don't remember the exact words, but I said, "Don't be a bitch and talk to me about it," knowing that he had said, he brought up some things that Bubba had said with Miss Amaskita, and she talked to me about it, and I just said, well, whatever, he's 5 years old, he says things. I'm not concerned about it, but Michael seemed pretty concerned about it. So he'd obviously come back to have a discussion with you about that, but he decided to bring his dad with him for some reason. And so I said what I said, and he instantly took both his fists, shoved them into me, and walked into our house. And I understand he was upset, but he came to the house upset. He came to the house with his dad upset. So he pushed me into the house, said what he said, tried saying that, you don't do these things to my kid. Tried to basically intimidate me about something that didn't happen, and threatened me, threatened violence over what I had done that I had not actually done. And then his dad came flying out of the truck and ran up directly in the doorway as well, yelling and cursing and threatening as well. And Michael had stepped back through the doorway, but kept his foot in the doorway, blocking the door from shutting it. And I didn't want to make the situation get any worse, so I didn't try to shut the door on his foot, but I was standing in the doorway, blocking the doorway, because I've got my family inside the house that I need to protect. I don't need to have two grown men attacking me or beating me up or hurting me in front of my family or kids or anything. I don't need anything to happen to them. I don't know what was going to happen. I didn't want to have to try to fight off two grown men in my house with the kids present. So I waited until Michael Miller Jr. moved his foot out of the way. I was watching his foot the entire time that him and his dad were yelling at me, saying what they were saying. They didn't advance into the house after the initial time that Michael Miller Jr. came into the house. And they stood in the doorway yelling, and I watched Michael Miller Jr.'s foot. And as soon as Senior tried approaching me, pointing his finger, yelling, tense, red face, Junior turned around and tried to restrain him. And then, as soon as he moved his foot to try to restrain his father, I slammed the door in an attempt to try to keep them from coming into the house. And one of them kicked the door in and broke the frame, and they both walked back to the truck. And I didn't know what to do to keep them from, I assumed they were leaving, but at the same time, I didn't want anything else to happen. So I held up my phone like I was recording them, and I was not recording them, but I just wanted them to feel like I didn't think to record them. I didn't think that I was going to have a confrontation at the door, and I didn't think that it was something I was going to have to record. So, and I don't normally have to deal with that, but now every time I answer the door, I have to have my phone recorded because I don't know who's there. But
Do you want to take a minute, Mr. Shattuck?
I'm sorry, I need a second, just like one later. I'll be okay. But I just held my phone, and then they drove off, and we called the police right after that, and we both filled out police. Me, Angel, and I filled out police reports. And that's what happened on that day.
And Your Honor, I have exhibit 102 for the incident that happened that day. Okay. And then did you speak with the police about the incident and the allegations that were put on you?
Yeah, I spoke with them about, I emailed them about the incident because I didn't know if they'd responded to the incident on the 8th. And then what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
If you talked to the police about the accusations and if they had any questioning for you.
Yeah, they came and asked about it, and I said that I don't hit the kid and that I don't know why he would say that I was hitting him, and that I haven't had a chance to talk with him about why he would say that or what he meant. He's 5 years old, and everything that he says cannot be taken as fact. It has to be interpreted. Could have seen something on TV or a book or I don't know. I haven't had a chance to speak with him about it at all. the day that he was at our house after the baby was born, he was here for one day, and he was just hanging out with his brother, and I wasn't going to grill him about something he might have said to his dad, and I wasn't really concerned with it because, yeah, like the child said something to his dad, dad talked to mom, and it was done. I thought that I didn't see any reason that it would go beyond that.
When you went to court for the protection order, what did the judge say about the order when you got it placed on you?
He said he didn't go into details as to why, but he said that I could file for a revision after having an unfounded CPS letter from the investigation. But there was a mistake because I'd gone to the CPS office and asked them about what was going on with this because I was looking for the unfounded letter and I just still hadn't received it. And the documents I received from CPS didn't have it. And so I went to talk to them and they couldn't tell me anything. And I asked for a supervisor and they explained that there was no investigation. There was only a family assessment response, which doesn't have a founded or unfounded letter. So the protection order being put in place in the first place was based off the idea that there was an investigation, but there wasn't. It was a family assessment response, which I was told by CPS that is different than an investigation. And a family assessment response doesn't get a letter. It's just they determine whether it's a safe house or not. And I was told that I wouldn't get the family assessment response from CPS unless it was completed. And it had the date on there is, I think, November 16th that it was completed and closed. But Nelson was the Commissioner Nelson was the person that put the protection order in place. And yeah, the words that were flying around there were investigation. That's what he had on the order was investigation, but there never was an investigation.
Okay.
And the person in the CPS office also asked which commissioner or which judge handled it. And I told her it was Nelson, and she said that he should understand by turning this into him that that's as good as an unfounded letter is. So, but I don't know, that's just what they told me. I just got these documents 2 days ago, so I haven't been able to file for having it dropped yet.
In the past, before all this, have you ever talked to Michael about discipline for Bubba?
Yeah, after the incident where I grabbed Bubba's arm and left a mark on it, I talked to him. I didn't know that I left a mark. I didn't see a mark, and the mark didn't show up until he took a bath. And then I was sent the picture and asked about it, and I called Michael and apologized for it because I didn't mean to leave a mark. I don't intend to do that. He had punched his brother directly in the face, and I was just trying to address the situation and let him know that it was not something that he should do because they'd never fought like that. They'd never just attacked each other or full on hit each other. And so I was just trying to address the situation, and I grabbed his arm too hard. And I called Michael because I was sorry. I didn't mean to do that. And I wouldn't. There's never been. I don't know. It wasn't. That was not. Grabbing his arm was not discipline. I wasn't trying to discipline him by hurting his arm. I grabbed his arm because he hit his brother with it, and I wanted to draw attention. I don't know. I just wanted to draw attention to you don't do that with his hand. And yeah, I called Mike. I apologized, and I called Mr. Miller Jr. and apologized and explained the situation, and he said it doesn't ever want it to happen again. And I understand that, and he understood that happens. He said he knows that happens. Which I assume is why CPS wasn't called and the police weren't called over that, because he understood that it was an accident, and it's never happened again. So talked about discipline. He said he puts him in the corner, and that was it. And that's fine. The discipline wasn't really a problem before that. I mean, that wasn't an act of discipline. It was just an accident.
What was Bubba's schooling like? Like preschool and then than kindergarten?
I was at work, you would take him to school, and then I would pick him up from school on my way home from work. And I would talk to his teachers every day and just ask them how he was and if anything happened, and they would talk to me and just tell me about his behavior, tell him what he's done, tell him what he, how the good things and the bad things. And he never really had any behavioral issues. Well, he had behavior issues, but he didn't have, he had kind of like authority issues. He just didn't want to listen. He wanted to run around. But he wasn't hitting kids and hurting them and ever doing anything like that. He wasn't doing anything violent. He was just unruly, if anything. But yeah, he was learning and he was growing, and he's a little goofy and he likes to have a little longer leash, but he was he's a good kid and he listened. So I don't know. The teachers never had any really big problems with him. They just said he'd like to run out of the classroom sometimes.
What do you think is the best interest for Bubba?
I've always thought that he should have more time with his father because I think it was about 4 years, he only spent every other weekend with him. And I'd had discussions with Angel or Miss Amosquita over it. We just hadn't gotten to the point of we hadn't gotten to the point where Angel or Miss Amosquita would discuss it with Mr. Miller. But me, Angel and myself, Miss Amosquita and myself had discussions over it. I'm sorry, I lost track of the question.
What was the best interest for Bubba?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just thought he should spend more time with his dad. I know that he spends time with his family over there, and he has cousins, and he doesn't have any cousins here. And but he's got his brothers. He's at least got William, which is 3, and can talk and do things with them. They're pretty close to the same activity level. I don't know where. But yeah, I think he needs time here with his mom and his brothers, and I think he needs time with his dad and his sisters and his cousins, his grandparents and all that. I think he needs time with both people. I don't see why it should be any other way than 50-50, unless there's a reason he shouldn't, a serious reason why he shouldn't be at one place or the other, which I don't think there's a serious reason why he shouldn't be at one place or the other. As far as I can tell, he's taking care of it both places. But I just,
Your Honor, so there's Exhibit 106. I don't know if you have that one or not. They're the letters that we got from the CPS supervisor.
Yes.
So you have them. Okay.
Miss Amosquita, and Your Honor, I would be fine with her just putting everything onto the record and not having to formally put anything on and putting it into evidence. That's fine with me if she just wants to admit everything right now.
You want me to consider, I'm assuming, all 7 exhibits that you've submitted?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm fine with her just going ahead and submitting them all. That's fine. I don't have any foundational issues.
Okay.
Okay.
So what I'll do, Miss Amosquita, is I'll just admit all the 7 exhibits. You can
Okay.
still go about, for the record, 101 through 107 will be admitted. And then you can, I guess, go back to your reference of 106, but it'll officially be part of the record now. So.
Okay. Okay. I don't think I have any more questions.
Okay. Miss Williams, do you have any questions of Mr. Chaddock?
Yes, Your Honor, if you'll give me just a moment.
Sure.
Mr. Chaddock, you mentioned that CPS did not do an investigation. Is that your understanding? There was no investigation into child abuse?
with Michael Miller III? No.
I would direct the court's attention to Ms. Amosquita's Exhibit 6 that she just admitted. At the very bottom, it says, "What does CPS find?" It says CPS investigated the allegation. Have you seen the CPS letters that came back unfounded? The exhibits that Ms. Amosquita put into evidence, these 2 unfounded letters for you and Ms. Amosquita?
I've seen them.
So you're aware at the bottom, it says that it's possible that there was insufficient evidence to determine whether the alleged child abuse did or did not occur?
It sounds accurate.
And in the exhibits that Ms. Amaskita put into evidence, we have exhibit number 7, which is a declaration that you wrote. Are you familiar with a declaration that you wrote that starts with, my name is Michael Chaddock. I've been in a relationship with Angel Amaskita since November 7th, 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
Vaguely. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. Are you familiar that when you wrote your declaration, at the second to last paragraph, you wrote DCYF and the police have never been called prior to him, I'm assuming that would be Michael Miller, assaulting you?
In reference to Michael Miller 3, yes.
So the CPS have never been called before.
In reference to Michael Miller 3, no, they have not.
But you did not say in regards to Michael Miller 3 in your declaration, you just said CPS has not been called.
Because my declaration is about Michael Miller 3.
So you are aware that there were 2 other CPS investigations that were done
Of
for you
course.
and Ms. Amaskita.
Of course.
And in that CPS report, which I admitted as Exhibit 13, I don't know if you have, I doubt you have in front of you, Mr. Chaddock. Would you like me to share my screen so you can see it?
No, I'm okay. I'm
Okay.
familiar with the investigations.
So you have seen the 80 pages of the CPS report.
Yes, I received 155 pages of everything that CPS had on me that they could release to me.
All right. So on page 17 of Exhibit 13, there are the 2 previous CPS intakes regarding this family. So you are again aware that there were 2 previous CPS intakes regarding your family.
No, there was more than that.
Can
There
I
were more than
object?
2. Sorry, Your Honor, you're muted.
Sorry, what's the basis for your objection?
These CPS intakes are for an unrelated matter to me and Michael's son. They're from when my mom had my sister and me going through CPS because my mom hit my sister. Like, this is a whole big thing I'd have to explain, and it would take way longer to explain it all.
Okay,
Commissioner,
so essentially it's a relevance
yeah,
objection.
it's irrelevant.
Okay. Any response, Ms. Holder?
Yes, ma'am, I have a response, or yes, Your Honor, I have a response. So one of the investigations that this is specifically mentioning is an incident in which Ms. Amaskita's sister, who was 14 at the time, alleges that Mr. Chaddock strangled her and then locked her out of the home while she was without a coat and barefoot. And then CPS investigated that incident. And at that point in time, while they were investigating that first incident, a second incident occurred where a CPS investigator went to Ms. Amaskita's home to ask her about those allegations. Ms. Amaskita was asleep, and a 4-year-old Michael Miller III answered the door without supervision. The CPS worker asked, "Where's your mom?" asked him to wake her up. She would not wake up because she had taken sleep medication, at which point in time, Michael Miller III, or Bubba, who is the subject of this trial, was then left unattended in the yard for 5 to 10 minutes, asked to go home with the CPS investigator. So yes, I would think this is extremely relevant to the case at hand.
Yeah, I've dealt with CPS, and they did come back and talk to us, and then we fixed what they wanted.
Okay, so I'm gonna overrule your objection, and then if there's any supplemental information, obviously you can ask Mr. Chaddock additional questions, and then you are free to testify yourself. So I'll overrule. So if you probably at this point, Ms. Holder, if you could restate your question for Mr. Chaddock.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that on the record, he states that he was aware there were at least 2 prior CPS investigations. And he has stated yes, and that there are more. So I'm satisfied with my answer.
No, there was not more than 2 investigations.
Mr. Chaddock, did you not just say there were more than 2?
No, you said intakes. There was more than 2 intakes. There was only 2 investigations.
Well, how many investigations were there?
2.
And how many intakes were there?
I'm not sure.
Would you
There were
say
a few.
it's more than 2?
Yeah, there were a few more, but intakes don't always become investigations.
More than 5 intakes?
No, I think there was about 5
About 5 intakes.
different calls from the mother of her sister, or I guess her mother.
And I don't have that information in front of me, but what were those intakes regarding?
Child abuse of her sister.
And who was the alleged abuser in that case?
Me.
I want to orient you to one of the investigations that was done. You were alleged to have strangled Miss Amosquita's sister.
Right.
And Miss Amosquita's sister was 14 at the time,
I believe so.
and she's 16 now,
Yes.
and she still lives in the home.
Yeah.
And her name is Jordan, correct?
Yes.
And Jordan has stated to CPS that you both have tempers.
Was that a question?
Yes, that was.
I don't know.
Do you ever get into arguments with Jordan?
Yeah, all the time.
What kind of arguments do you have?
She wants to pretend she's an adult and can do whatever she wants. And I try to remind her that that will lead to a bad life.
And is your way of disciplining her to lock her out of the house?
No,
Do you ever lock her out of the room?
I have locked the back room. Yes.
And why did you lock the back room?
I don't recall. There was something in there that if you give me a moment, I can remember. I can try to remember. It might have been, I think that might have been when she had the knife and she was threatening to hurt herself. And so I didn't want her to be able to isolate herself with, she would break glass and use it to cut herself. So I wasn't sure what she would hurt herself with, but I didn't want her to be by herself on, in an elevated state.
So your solution to making sure she wasn't by herself was to lock her in a room?
No, I locked the room so she could not go into the room and cut herself. So she was not in the room.
And did she have a habit of doing that? Trying to cut herself?
She did when she was 14. She does
She
not
doesn't-
now.
And has she ever broken any doors, any locks on any doors?
Yeah, she broke the front door lock one time.
Just one time?
She broke the front door lock, the high safety lock, the extra lock that I had installed to keep the kids from getting out of the house. She'd broken that lock. I
Do you know how she broke them?
think she just slammed the door when the lock was engaged. So it broke. It was right before when Buddy went outside. I just hadn't fixed it yet. He didn't usually mess with the door, so we weren't concerned that he would try to just walk out. And I guess I just should have replaced it sooner.
When Mr. Miller filed a domestic violence protective order against you, do you remember writing a declaration in your support?
Yes.
And do you remember when you were talking about how you disciplined Bubba, how you said, I have mimicked his actions against his brother to show him why it's not good to do?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I apologize. I must be farther away from the monitor. In your declaration that you wrote in support of yourself when Mr. Miller filed a domestic violence protective order against you, you wrote in your declaration, I have mimicked his, meaning Bubba's, actions against his brother to show him why it isn't good to do.
Yes.
And when you say you mimic his actions, you mean you wave your hands in front of Bubba's face?
I've done that, yes.
And so this upsets Bubba when you do that.
I don't do it to the point of him being upset. I do it to show him that it's upsetting because of him doing it to his brother.
So he never gets upset when you wave your arms in his face.
I do it as an example and to teach him so that,
But he never gets upset.
No, not more. No, I asked him, is that annoying or we're having a conversation so that he can understand that behavior is not something he should do.
And when you
That's
ask him if it's annoying, what's his response?
Laughing, yes.
And you find that particularly effective?
Yeah. Well, I find that sitting down and explaining things to him is effective, yes.
But you
And-
also find waving your hands in front of him and taunting him to be effective as well.
I've never taunted him. I think that if he exhibits a specific behavior, and then I go to him with that specific behavior and I say, hey, this thing you did, you know, does it bother you if I do it to you? It's an example. It's not to make him feel bad. It's to show him in a safe environment why that behavior might be upsetting to a person. And it was effective with him because then he could understand it in a safe environment rather than doing it to another child and having that child fight or hit or you know what I mean, in an environment where it might cause a conflict with another person that's not trying to teach him something.
So just so I understand, your way of disciplining him or talking to him is to show him behavior you find to be problematic and then doing that to him to teach him a lesson.
No.
I'm confused then. Where did I get that wrong?
Are you talking about discipline, or what do you specifically, or?
This is, if I'm not mistaken, this is what you said is your way of disciplining Bubba and talking to him when he does things like messes with his little brother.
Yes, I'm teaching him discipline by sitting down and talking to him and showing him bad behavior so that he understands why they're bad.
Also, in that same declaration that you wrote, you said we don't commit acts of violence and we talk about things.
Yes.
Who is we?
Everybody in this house. That's the goal.
So, do you think that slapping someone in the face is violence?
Yeah.
Do you think
If it's
spitting on someone is violence?
Both of those things, if committed aggressively with intent to harm somebody, yes.
So as long as you do those things and the person who's doing them is not intending harm, they are not harmful. Is that my understanding?
If there's an agreement between the two people to do those things, or if it's an accident, then it's not harmful. But
So has Angel slapped you in the face before?
she did one time jokingly.
Jokingly. And what did you do in response?
Nothing.
So you didn't spit on her in return?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I didn't spit on her in return. There was one time, the day that Bubba was here for the one day, where we were in the kitchen talking, and she said I spit on her because spit came out of my mouth and hit her face.
So on one of your hearings for your domestic violence protective order, you did not state on the record that Angel slapped you in the face and then you spit in her face. You did not say that.
I did not say that. I said that my spit got on her face. It's not one thing and then a response to that thing. We were having an argument or a discussion. It was not heated, and she jokingly put her hand on my face. It wasn't like she hit me.
And then you jokingly spit in her face?
No, that's two separate events, two separate moments. They were not related.
Your Honor, may I have permission to share my screen?
Yes, give me 1 second here.
Plays on this. This was in Commissioner Nelson's courtroom on November 11th, I believe, of 2022. The voice you're going to hear is Commissioner Nelson, and the second voice is yours. Please tell me if you can hear it.
The mother essentially scolded you after you engaged in some behavior. Has that ever happened?
There was one incident where me and Angel had an argument completely unrelated to the child, where she did slap me in the face and I did spit in her face. It was with a private matter that has nothing to do with him.
It wasn't related to any kind of discipline that you were giving the child?
No, not at all.
Was it clear that time, Your Honor?
Yes, I could hear that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chaddock, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
The commissioner asked if those things happened, and I said they did.
And so you're saying now that those things did happen, that Miss Amskita slapped you in the face and your response during an argument was to spit in her face.
It was never said that was my response. It was asked if those two events happened, and I confirmed that they did.
And it happened together?
No.
So there were different incidents of alleged abuse where someone slapped someone and another person spit in someone's face. So instead of one incident, you're telling me there was two incidents.
What do you mean alleged abuse?
Can I object?
Yes, you can always object. What is the
Okay.
foundation for your objection?
I think she's like, what do you call it? Badgering him into saying something he should like say, trying to lead him on to say things that aren't true, or trying to get him to say something. I don't know what it's called. I'm sorry.
No, there is a badgering the witness. This is cross-examination, so she can be a little bit more forceful in questioning and also ask leading questions as part of that. So I am aware of the concern, and I will call a stop to it if it gets out of control.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done with that particular line of questioning. Back to your testimony that you had with on your direct with Ms. Amosquito. Did you said that his behavior while Buddy was in school, while he lived with you and Ms. Amosquito, you said there weren't any issues and that he was
No.
fine?
I did not say that.
What did, correct me then, what did you say?
I don't recall exactly, but I did not say there weren't any issues. I said that at school he liked to leave the classroom, and that's the big issue I understood at school, was that he liked to run out of the classroom, and the teachers were aware of it, and they knew it was a problem, and they were working on it, and they had different people working on it, and of course he's growing older and getting different teachers. But aside from that, there wasn't any known issues at school that were outside of their ability to handle, and even that was described by them in their ability to handle.
Did he ever get sent home from school early?
I believe there's at least one time that I know of that he did.
How many, did he ever have out of school suspensions?
No, not that I know of.
Did you ever look at any of his school transcripts?
I have.
And have you ever noticed that there are, in the beginning of fall of 2022, at least 4 documented incidents of out of school suspensions listed on his transcript?
I haven't seen that. I don't know what dates that is about.
And Mr. Chaddock, I can always share my screen with you so you can see these exhibits if you'd like to see them. This is what's in evidence is my exhibit 2, the school records for Wallace Elementary on page 7 of page 10. There are out of school suspensions listed for September 7th. He was home with mom for out of school suspension. Did you know about that?
No, not that I can remember.
Did you know that he was out for out of school suspension on September 13th of 2022?
I don't know what those are.
Previously on the record in testimony in that same hearing that I shared with the court from November 11th, you stated that you spent more time with Buddy than anybody else in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So you spent more time with Buddy in the last 4 years, but you didn't know that he was suspended from school for out of school suspension at least 5 times?
Again, I haven't seen what you're talking about, so I'm not sure about the terminology of it, or if that's, I'm not sure. Saying that I've spent time with him means that I was physically with him more than anyone.
Did you spend time physically with him when he should have been in school?
Of course not. Well, I don't know what you mean. I worked when he was at school, the entire time he was at school. He went to school from 12 to 3:30, I believe, for a while for pre-K, and then for kindergarten he was 8 to 8, or I think it was 8 to 3:30.
Mr. Chaddock, at that same hearing on November 11th of 2022, did you state on the record that, quote, Angel wakes up in the morning and then she goes to work and then you have him, meaning Buddy, for the rest of the night?
I don't know if I said that. I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Do you need me to play it for you so you can hear it?
Are you just, if you would like to, I'm not, what, or you could just repeat it. I'm sorry. I just didn't understand.
So you remember you had a domestic violence protective order hearing.
Yes.
You remember that you had, I believe there were 3 of them due to them being continued.
Yes.
Do you remember the judge asking you questions about your relationship with Michael Biller III or Buddy?
Vaguely, yes. He asked me questions. I don't remember what they were.
Okay. So one of the questions that he asked you, he was asking you about your relationship and how much time you spent with the child. Does that sound familiar?
I believe he would have asked me that. Yes. Yeah.
And your answer to that was, quote, you've spent more time, I'm going to quote you here. I've spent more time with Buddy than anyone else in the last 4 years. Angel wakes up in the morning and then she goes to work and then I have him for the rest of the night.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. In that hearing, you also stated you can't do anything about his behavior because you're not his father.
Yes. The child understands that I'm not his father, and he treats me differently, and he listens to me differently than he will his own father. That's not in my control.
And is it safe to say that because he's not your child, you treat him differently than your children?
No.
So you discipline him the same as you discipline your children?
Yes.
So you do discipline him?
You mean teach him discipline?
Do you discipline your own children, Mr. Chaddock?
Yeah.
How do you discipline them?
I talk to them about bad behavior.
So you've never spanked them?
I spank them on occasion, but it's rare and light.
So you spank your children? You have?
Yes, I have.
And you don't treat Buddy any differently than your own children?
Right.
So you spank him too?
I have spanked him, yes. But he's growing out of it, being effective, and he's growing out of needing that to be, he's learning to communicate better. So I'm more able to communicate bad behavior with him with words than just telling him don't do it and give him a little swat on the butt. And I generally wouldn't swat him on the butt anyways.
When's the last time you've seen Buddy?
October 8th, 2022.
So you don't know if he would still behave that way. You're talking about him as though he would still behave that way.
Behave what way?
With discipline. Your understanding is that he's getting old enough not to be physically disciplined.
Old enough that communication works to teach him things more than a spanking would. No one's spanking adults because it's not going to be effective. We talk to each other. So Buddy's growing and he's able to use words rather than spanking. That's something that people do with children, and then they eventually stop when they don't have to. And that's if they even include spanking in their discipline, which was how I was raised. And I have grown out of it myself, doing it with the kids. It was just
So
what I
it's
knew from how I was
fair
raised.
to say that you, quote, don't go outside the lines of moderate discipline.
Right.
And you said that on the record.
Okay.
Now, when Bubba lived with you, he didn't have any medication, did he?
No.
Why not?
Because his parents didn't take him to the doctor and get him on medication.
Do you believe he should have been on medication?
I'm not a doctor, but I generally disagree with medication if it's not needed.
How do you know if something's needed?
I don't. I know my personal experiences, and the drugs given to a child for ADHD are not in my realm of knowledge.
Did you ever have conversations with Miss Amosquita about medicating Buddy?
I've just told her to talk to Michael about it.
And beyond that, you haven't talked to her about having him on medication?
I may have had conversations with her. I'm not sure what you mean.
Have you ever talked to her, for example, saying, Buddy has some behavioral problems. Maybe we should look into medication for ADHD?
No, I would say that we rely on his behavior at home was not that required medication. His behavior at school was something I've never seen. And I've told Angel that he had a what do you call it, where the kids all go off on a field trip. And he had a field trip coming up. And I was talking to Angel about wanting to be a volunteer for that because I wanted to actually see how Buddy was in that environment, because I've never seen him at school. I've never picked him up from school. I've never seen his behavior there. So I didn't know if he should be on medication.
What do you know about Buddy's school?
I know that he's learning and that he leaves the classroom. I know that he was beginning to write, and I was beginning to teach him how to spell things.
Do you know how many absences he had?
I know that he had some.
Do you know ballpark how many he had?
While he was with us.
Yes.
Ballpark, I think it was maybe, I think there was, since he started pre-K through kindergarten, through the time we had him, I'd only remembered about 5 to 10 instances where he wasn't at school.
Do you ever remember Miss Amosquita getting calls telling her to pick him up in the middle of the day because he was acting out?
She's been called to pick him up, and I don't know the reasons she was called.
You don't talk to the mother of your other 2 children about why a child would need to get picked up from school early,
I do talk to her.
but not about that.
I may have. Yeah, I probably talked to her about why he was being picked up or what he had done. As much as I can remember, it was just about him not listening to teachers.
Do you ever remember her having to pick him up for half days because he was hitting people or spitting on people?
No.
Want to draw your attention back to Exhibit 13, page 66. The very top, it says, Miss Amosquita stated that she tries to speak with her son about why he is in trouble, but stated that he gets upset and will throw things or spit in her face. Miss Amosquita's also stated that they are working, that he has ADHD and is working on getting him medication. Mr. Chaddock, has Miss Amosquita ever told you that she was going to be working on getting
It was something that she was discussing with his father. That's not my decision to make.
So while he was living with you, for how many years was he living with you?
Just under 5.
In those 5 years, what kind of conversations would you have with Miss Amosquita about Buddy?
It's just Angel worked in the mornings, and then there's about a half an hour we saw each other. Or sorry, I worked in the mornings, and then there's about half an hour, and then she would go to work until midnight. And so we were usually just relaying information, whether it was what his teacher, I'd pick him up from school, so I'd tell her what the teacher said and relay that information. And then she'd tell me how he was that morning or how all the kids were that morning. And then I'd have the kids for the rest of the night.
So just so I understand, you're the one who picked him up from school most days?
Yes.
And you didn't know that he had out of school suspension and was not in school?
For how long?
At least 5 days.
5 consecutive days?
5 days during the very beginning, like September of 2022. You don't remember Buddy having out of school suspension, even though you were the one who normally would pick him up from school.
Out of school suspension. I, for whatever reason, don't recall that. If I knew, obviously, if I didn't pick him up, I didn't pick him up, but that was just part of me coming home. If he was at home for some reason, then they would have discussed it with his mother. They discussed things with her. I would just chat with his teachers after, when I picked him up.
Right. And a little bit ago, you were talking about how you wanted to go on a field trip to see how he was at school.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that was because you never saw him at school.
Right, in school.
And because you never picked him up from school.
No, I said in school, not after school. I had not seen him while he was attending school. I just saw him when I picked him up from school. So I didn't see him in the classroom. I didn't see how he worked. I didn't see how he talked to the teachers in the classroom. I saw how he talked to the people that were watching him outside the school when I picked him up, who were generally not his actual teachers.
Did you ever talk to any of his teachers?
I don't recall talking to any of his actual teachers.
So you picked him up in the school in the afternoons, but you don't remember talking to any of his teachers?
No, the people outside with the kids were not the teachers all the time. They had
Did Miss Amosquita ever go to any parent-teacher conferences?
Yes.
And did you talk with her what happened at those parent-teacher conferences?
Yes.
And what kind of things would you talk about?
I don't recall exactly. We've talked about them, but I don't remember anything outside of the normal behavior issues that they were dealing with at the school.
And remind me again, what kind of behavioral issues were they?
Staying in the classroom,
So that's the only behavioral
focusing
issue
on
you,
work, maybe.
that's the only issue that you remember Buddy having, was that he just didn't stay in the classroom.
The only other incident I remember him having at school was him saying that a kid kicked him or something one time, or a kid pulled a chair out from underneath him.
And you never heard any reports of Buddy kicking or spitting or hitting anybody?
No.
Did he do that kind of behavior at your home?
No.
So he never hit any of his siblings?
Aside from the one time when he hit his brother, that was when his brother was less than a year old. So Buddy was around 3 years old. They didn't. No, that was the one time he punched his brother in the face when they were younger.
And how old is William, correct?
Yes.
How old was William?
Less than a year. I think he was around 10 months old. I can't remember exactly. I just remember that he was less than a year old.
And that was the instance where you grabbed Buddy's arm and you left Mark.
Yeah.
And you said that was an accident.
Yeah.
And you didn't even know you left Mark.
Right.
When Mr. Miller tried to talk to you about that, who deemed it an accident? Was it you or was it him?
We both understood that it was an accident.
How do you know that Mr. Miller understood it to be an accident?
Because he said it on the phone call. And then after that, we texted each other about, I asked him what he does for him when he's not listening or misbehaving.
And
he said
what did he respond?
He said that he puts him in a corner.
And do you have these text messages so we can see them?
I have them on Messenger. Is there a way that I can put them on the screen?
I believe Ms. Amasquita might have already provided some where
She didn't provide mine.
Those are different.
I can read it to you if you'd like.
Sure.
So the call was on May 8th, 2021 at 5:48 p.m.
And this was regarding those handprints that you found that were on Buddy.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
So this was at 5:48 p.m. We had the phone call and it lasted 4 minutes. And then at 6:16 p.m., so about 30 minutes after that, I messaged him and I said, just a heads up, he bit William a few times too. He's been following him everywhere and hitting or taking toys as soon as we turn around for about a week now. As of yesterday.
Mr. Tadek, I'm going to stop you. A few minutes ago, you said there was only one incident where Buddy had hit his brother.
Right, that I recalled.
And so now you're saying that based on these text messages, you're saying there's more incidents where Buddy is being violent in the home.
I would say inappropriate, not violent.
So biting to you is not violence.
If you're not leaving a mark, then it's.
But when you left a mark on Buddy,
Can I object?
that was violence
You can
because there was a mark.
What's the objection?
That was like, so the incident that she's talking about, that was when there was a biter in preschool biting kids. That's a unrelated matter.
Okay, well, you can ask clarifying questions of Mr. Chaddock regarding that or testify about that yourself.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Holder.
So Mr. Chaddock, I'm going to ask you again. So it's not violence if you don't leave a mark.
You asked me to define violence?
No, I'm asking you if you do not leave a mark, is there no violence?
It sounds like that statement's false.
So then if there is a mark, it is violence.
I don't define the level of violence by a mark or not. I'm not sure what you're asking.
So to you, slapping someone in the face, if it doesn't leave a mark, is not violence.
I disagree with that.
Okay. So when you slapped Ms. Amasquita in the face and it didn't leave a mark, that was violence.
I'd never slapped her.
Or excuse me, when she slapped you.
Right.
Okay. So by that, when you spit on her, it didn't leave a mark. Was that violence?
It was that situation. No, it was not violence.
You had on the record, said you had an argument and an altercation. She slapped you, you spit in her face. That to you is not violence.
I said my spit got on her face. I did not spit on her face.
Mr. Chaddock, I can play the audio recording for you again.
Okay, but
I'm going to move on, just so I'm clear. When you left a mark on Buddy and it stayed on his arm for multiple days, you're saying that was an accident, correct?
I've never seen evidence that it lasted multiple days. There's been one photo.
I have had multiple witnesses that have said it lasted for a day. There is a photo. The photo shows that it left a mark. Mr. Miller talked to you about you leaving a mark on his son's arm. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I called him about it. Yes.
You agree there was a mark left on Buddy?
Yeah, there's a picture of it.
Okay. So by that logic, you're saying if you leave a mark, then it can be violence.
It can be violence whether you leave a mark or not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chaddock. You've said that Mr. Miller's threatened you, but you've never specified what those threats were. What were the threats?
Things got a little hazy when I was more concerned about my family getting involved in what he was doing. But it was threats.
I don't remember the threats.
I don't remember his exact terminology because that varies from person to person, but it was basically,
Well, I'm asking you specifically the threats you remember.
no, when he was shoving me and stepping into my house, I don't remember exactly what he said. No.
When you allege that Mr. Miller shoved you, did he leave any marks on you?
No.
So by your way of thinking, that wasn't violent because there were no marks.
I'm gonna ask you to disregard that question. Let's ask something else. I think
All right,
that
you're right.
misconstruing his comments.
You mentioned that when when Mr. Miller and Mr. Miller's father, Miss Michael Miller Sr., were at your home, someone kicked in the door.
Yes.
Did you see who kicked in the door?
No, the door was shut when the person kicked it in. It appeared that his father was more in position and more aggressive at that moment.
So
His
walk me
father-
through that. So
What's
you
that?
shut the door. So walk me through this. You shut the door. Someone kicked in the door.
Yes.
And then what happened?
They quickly went to the truck.
And at this point, you did what?
I held out my phone and pretended to record them so that they would not do anything else and get out of there.
Why did you pretend to record them and not actually record them?
I just held my phone up. I just had my door kicked in. Had a lot of adrenaline in my system. I couldn't really think to get my phone out and record it. I don't even know if I could have pressed the button because I was shaking, because I was scared for my family.
So you say you're scared for your family. Earlier you said when Buddy was saying that there were accusations of domestic violence against you. Your response to that is, he's 5, he says things, I'm not concerned about it. Are you not concerned when someone makes an allegation of domestic violence against you, Mr. Chaddock?
I was concerned about any new thing that you find out that involves you. So when she first told me that Michael Jr. had said those things to her, Michael Jr. claiming that Michael III had claimed things, I said, what did he say? And he said, I hit him on the head and hit his neck or something. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't. So, and I didn't think that kids say things, they say things all day long. Buddy comes home and says a chair was pulled out from under him. I don't go running to the school and say, who pulled that chair? I just,
Why not?
because there are adults that are working at the school that deal with those sort of things.
So if
I ask if the child's okay, and if he's okay, and I talk to the
who do you
teacher.
ask? So are you concerned with your child's safety at school?
Yeah,
Do you consider Buddy to be one of your children?
in what sense?
Lives in your home, been with him every day for approximately 5 years. helped him learn to talk and walk and spell. You don't consider him one of your children?
Oh, so I raise him like he's my child. I consider him. There's been a lot of discussion about specifically who has rights to be a child's parent. And so I am not the child's parent, but I'm responsible for him as much as Angel gives me the right to be. She's his mother. She can cut me off and I'm gone, and I have no rights to the child. So while I'm with Angel, I raise him like he's my kid.
So you said that Angel, you have as many rights as Angel lets you have. How many rights does Angel let you have as his, I guess, stepfather?
As many as the law allows. I'm not sure what you mean.
I'm not sure what I'm trying to sorry, Mr. Chaddock. I'm trying to understand when you say that you have as many rights as Angel allows you to have. I don't know what that means, and I'd like for you to explain to me what that means, because I'm not understanding, and I don't know if you mean rights under the law. I'm trying to understand what you think your responsibility is to this child.
Angel's his biological mother, and she is responsible for what happens to him. I'm responsible for what happens to him when he's under my care as an adult caring for a minor. But I don't have rights. I can't just put him in my car and say, hey, we're moving to Oregon, because he's not my kid. It's Angel's child. So I just do what I can to help correct his behavior and help him grow, as would a parent and a teacher and a counselor and every other person that's going to help a child grow. I just try to fill in all those responsibilities and just help him be well-rounded.
And part of disciplining Buddy would be, if he's acting out, would be to grab him and to like pull him apart from his siblings.
No, he's never.
Is that not what happened in the past?
If it required it, I would do it. That's just,
Well,
every situation calls for a different approach.
right, and I understand that. And based on your testimony earlier, and based on what you have said, the reason Buddy had marks on his arm was because you pulled him away from his brother when he was hitting his brother.
I grabbed his arm, and I grabbed his arm and I said, you don't hit your brother. Like, that's what I did.
And in that moment, as a father figure in the home, you deemed that that was what was appropriate.
As someone responsible for teaching children not to punch each other in the face, I thought it was appropriate to grab his arm and say not to do that.
I don't have any further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Right. And Ms. Amaskita, do you have any redirect of Mr. Chaddock? Anything you want to clarify, or other questions that you have for him?
No.
All right. And so may Mr. Chaddock be excused at this point?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Chaddock, I appreciate your time. You're free to stay if you want, but you're free to log off. And if you do stay, I'd ask you to just mute yourself. And then otherwise you're free to go.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. And then,
Thank you.
Ms. Amaskita, are you intending to testify on your own behalf there?
So yeah. Around June of 2022, Michael told me about his relationship problems with Nicole. That's when I was pregnant. And I told him around September, October, I was going to have my baby. And I would need help closer to that time. He was going through depression and drinking problems. I provided Exhibit 101 with some, or no, never mind. Exhibit 101 is not that, sorry. I told him I would need help when I had the baby, and I didn't know the exact time I would have it. And he wasn't taking Bubba as much due to his depression and drinking. He missed a couple pickup days when we were exchanging him. September rolls around. I enrolled Bubba in school at Wallace. He did okay in preschool at Wallace because it was only half days. Bubba started showing signs of wanting to leave the classroom, and I was working with the counselor at Wallace to come up with a plan to help his behavior to where he would stay in school. And I did that for a while with the counselor up until the incident of the 8th and when I had my baby. And he was doing good for some days, bad for others. It depended on his mood. We'd sit down with the counselor and have him work out some stuff. And then she said if I felt comfortable leaving, I could leave. And then she would call me if I needed to come get him. Then I asked Michael to take him for 2 weeks because I got a C-section and I could not drive him to school on the 30th. And then he said he wanted to drop him off the 8th. And he dropped him off the 8th. This was after we discussed some stuff going on with his behavior. And he talked to me and my sister about his behavior with Bubba, because we both were the ones who had to pick him up a couple times from the school. And then the incident of the 8th happened. And that's when everything just went downhill. Michael came to the house with his dad and made threats and pushed Mike in the door, and my door got broken. I called the police. I have my 911 phone call. Unfortunately, I can't get the actual police report because it's still an active police investigation. I did admit the police report that I showed you earlier for evidence. I've been dealing with CPS off and on nonstop. Like every other week, I would get a call after the 8th. Have CPS show up at my door with new accusations from Mike sitting in the driveway smoking pot to Mike hitting the baby and William, or my oldest son said this and this, he saw this, but he wasn't at my house at the time when the accusations were said. I have exhibit 3, 103, which is a police report that Michael Jr.'s grandpa, I believe, called on Mike, which they closed it, and they said that they believe the investigation and statements were false for the child abuse, alleged child abuse. And then when Bubba was in school, I tried talking to Michael about his behavior, which is exhibit 101 on the front page. I asked him like what—
Ms. Amosquita, can you be more specific? Which Michael are we talking about that you talked to?
Michael Miller Jr.
Okay, thank you.
So exhibit 101 on the front page, and it goes back a couple pages. I was talking to him about our son's behavior and him being rude in school and me picking him up. And our conversation of me trying to tell him I'm trying not to spank him. I tried to talk to him. And then he told me I would have to put him in his place or he's getting worse. And him saying that he's going to probably get his ass beat at his house. And that it's a life lesson that
I'm sorry to interrupt. Ms. Amosquita, can you point to directly where it says that he's going to beat him at his house?
It didn't say his house, but it says that it's probably going to get his ass beat. Just right there.
Okay.
When I went to pick up Bubba from school one time, he said to me, my sister, and a couple staff members that Daddy beats me with a belt one time. And I was like, why would you say that? And I didn't know what to think of that. His school behavior was one I was trying to work with Michael on, but Michael didn't want to wake up in the morning to go sit with the counselor. He showed up at the counselor's office once or twice in the morning when we sat one-on-one with Bubba to do schoolwork and try to make a plan.
And this is still at Wallace, just so I'm clarifying.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, at Wallace.
Thank you.
I forgot the counselor's name, but there was one that was trying to help me, and she called in I was supposed to meet with another lady that did a youth group or she was kind of like a youth group lady. I forgot what her name was, but she was going to sit on one-on-one for Bubba and start doing home visits to try to help with him. And then when the incident of the 8th happened and I was bedridden for 2 weeks, I learned that Michael took Bubba out of Wallace and completely transferred him to Lexington without my knowledge. And the only way I found that out was when I got a letter in the mail from a report card, because I have no access to log into any of his school stuff. And the day I picked up my son, in, I think it was February, when Michael did call the cops on me, and the cop came here, and I told him he could search my house because Mr. Chaddock was not here. He was in Astoria. The cop told me I didn't do anything wrong by having my son here, because that's before the protection order was placed on me. I did visit with my son. My sister was here and she saw him. He was doing fine and acting fine. He wasn't hitting, punching, spitting, biting, or anything. And then I dropped him off the next morning and he was perfectly fine. Other than I had to switch his shoes out because his shoes were bad. I worked with CPS up until, I think, April. That's when they stopped showing up and when they would let me know about all the cases getting closed and stopped. I have the text messages for one of the CPS ladies that she was keeping in contact with me about the investigations, which they submitted all the CPS reports and all of them were closed or unfounded. When we did our settlement conference, we did it with Commissioner Nelson. I told him I wanted 50-50 and there was no agreement. So we had to go do this now, the trial. And I did get supervised visitation hours, and I did message Michael about those yesterday because the lady finally called me back about them. And he has yet to respond about the visitations because I finally got an answer from someone at the parents' place. Because they're super booked and gave me 2 days that I could pick a slot. And I do try to call my son often. I work nights now, so it's hard for me to wake up sometimes because I work 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. up until maybe 8 a.m. It depends on how much help they need at my work.
Can you tell me what days a week those are?
I work Sunday through Wednesday morning, Sunday night through Wednesday morning. And I'm part-time.
Thank you.
And I try to make it to where I call around 4 because Michael says he's either leaving from work or going to work. So I've been trying to wake up around 4. It's hard for me to wake up if I worked and it's been a heavy workload at work because I throw freight at work. So I try to set my alarm to wake up, and I have slept in a couple times. Or Michael said that he's going to work or he's at work or it's not a good time. So I've been trying to call more, and I have all those messages in my parent app. And I did talk to him, I think, yesterday for like a minute because he was busy with his grandma. And the only thing that concerns me is when I was on the phone with Bubba, he did say that there was something wrong with his brain and it makes him think bad or something. Like, I've never said anything to him like that or heard him say anything like that. So I don't know why he would say that to me. And I haven't seen him since October 8th, except for the one day I picked him up in February. Because I've been trying to schedule the supervised visits, but the places are hard to get a hold of. But I finally got the response yesterday from him. I think that's everything for me.
Okay. Ms. Holder's going to ask you some questions and you're going to have another opportunity. So if there's anything you want to clarify from what she asked, or if you think of other things, you'll have another opportunity. So
Okay.
cross-examination.
Ms. Kidd, if there's something I say that you don't understand or you don't hear me, just let me know that you don't understand my question. I can try to clarify it or reword it for you. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, you mentioned you drove freight. Where do you work?
Walmart.
Okay. So based on your testimony that you just gave, when your son, Bubba or Buddy, mentioned that his dad hits him with a belt, did you ever bring this up with Mr. Miller?
I did. And I asked him about it when I saw him at the school.
When you saw him at the school?
No, when he came over after I got Bubba from school.
Okay. And that was on February 6th?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
I'm sorry, and that was in February when you picked up Bubba from school that he mentioned the belt incident, or
No,
say-
this was way before that. This was in September.
okay. And when you talked to Mr. Miller about Buddy saying that his dad was beating him with a belt or spanking him with a belt, what was that conversation like?
Me and my sister, it was when he came over to talk to us about he told me what Bubba was saying about Mike, and I talked to him about the belt thing, and then I told him Bubba's been watching a lot of violent stuff on YouTube, and I told him I had to take all that off. Like I had to block all the YouTube kids stuff because he was watching too many like young teen shows to where they're like fighting each other.
Okay.
So I had to tell him I had to block those. And then my sister talked to him too about some incidents.
Your sister talked to who about incidents?
Michael Miller Jr.
Okay. And what kind of incidents did Michael Miller Jr. talk to your sister about?
About the stuff Bubba was saying about Mike and about his behavior at school.
Okay.
He came over when he dropped Bubba off on the day before the 8th.
And what kind of things? And what kind of things was Bubba saying about school?
I told him that he was not listening, that he did mention the belt thing, and he said you didn't beat him with a belt. He might threaten it, but he won't do it. And I was like, okay, because I told him that I don't want him to beat Bubba with the belt because that's not right. And then I talked to him about how we were doing shorter days for school when would take him when you go back with his dad, because I told him I still can't drive.
So shorter days being, this is when he was at Wallace?
Yes, this is all when he was at Wallace, because I wasn't involved when he was at Lexington.
Okay.
I didn't know he was at Lexington.
Okay. And when he was at Wallace, he was doing half days?
Yes, he was getting out at 11 and 12.
Okay. And why was he getting out at 11 and 12?
Because he would run around the school. He couldn't sit still in class. He always had to be doing something. Me and my sister had to go there multiple times because I was big and pregnant and couldn't chase him around the hallway. My sister would have to go and pick him up.
Okay. And were there any incidents of violence with him, with hitting or kicking or spitting other children?
No, he would hide, but he wouldn't hit and kick. He would flail around because he didn't want to get picked up, but he wouldn't hit or spit on other kids.
Have you seen him hit or spit or kick other children, including your other children?
No, except for the one thing that happened with William. But I don't remember too much.
And you said Michael Miller missed some pickup days. What days did he miss? And it is pickup days like at school, or these are exchanges? What kind of pickup days are these?
Exchanges.
And what was your normal, before you had a parenting plan in place? This is before you had a parenting plan in place, correct?
We've never had a parenting plan in place. The written, the verbal written agreement we had, he would get him every other weekend, and he would get him around 4 or 5, or whenever we agreed upon a day.
And so you are alleging that Mr. Miller missed some days with the exchange.
Yes, he has.
Okay. And there was a written agreement, but no parenting plan?
Yeah, we didn't have a parenting plan due to we didn't feel there was need for one at the time.
But there was a written agreement.
Yeah, through messages, we agreed on.
And do you know, I know you're still looking for those messages. Do you know what day Bubba was transferred from Wallace to Lexington?
No, I was never told about any of that. I have no information on that.
Was that after the October 8th incident?
Yes.
Okay. And just to clarify, there was no parenting plan in place.
No.
So, okay.
The parenting plan that he did was in December, I think. We never had one before that.
I believe it's Exhibit 7. The petition for the parenting plan was originally filed on December 8th of 2022. Does that sound about right, Ms. Amiskita?
Yeah.
Okay. When you were with Mr. Miller, you never made any accusations of domestic violence, did you?
No.
And to this day, you've still never made any accusations against Mr. Miller for domestic violence or any violent issues?
Not domestic violence. No, but he was verbally abusive. He'd always put me down and called me fat at the end of our relationship.
And the messages that you provided between you and Mr. Miller, where you discussed spanking Bubba, remind me, what exhibit was that again?
That was Exhibit 101.
And in these messages, I'm going to ask you, I see up in the top corner, underneath Michael Miller's name, underneath Exhibit 1, I see that you've got like, there's like a little blacked out redacted square that says spank.
Yeah,
And
that's how
that
I was searching stuff.
Okay, so just so I understand, that black dot that says spank, or that black box that says spank, is on all of the messages that you provided.
Yes, that's how I was trying to find when he said that we
Okay,
were talking
So these-
about sort of discipline.
again, I'm not
Great.
objecting to the actual exhibits. I just want to clarify that these exhibits are, that the messages are, that you have submitted are specifically with the word spank in them, and that's what you searched for.
Yes.
Okay,
Define.
so it's not like
Discipline.
months long, complete record of the text or the messages. It's just the key
No.
messages have that word in them.
I mean, if I submitted all of our messages, it'd be a lot of papers.
So it's fair to say that you have quite an extensive history of communicating with Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And up until recently, up until, as you say, all this started happening back in October, how would you say that your communicating with Mr. Miller was?
He would message me when he was depressed or drinking because of his divorce with Nicole. He would tell me how upset he was, and he would talk to me about personal stuff. And I'd tell him he needs to stop drinking because he shouldn't be drinking
And
because
he
it's
told you-
bad.
And he told you he doesn't drink around the children, right?
He said that, but I went and picked up or dropped off my son one time, and his face was super puffy and red, and I could tell he was drinking. And he missed a couple pickup days because of drinking.
How do you know he missed pickup days due to drinking? And just so I'm just to clarify, the exhibit that I put in with the petition for divorce between Mr. Miller and Mrs. Miller, I believe it's exhibit 10. Yes, exhibit 10. They filed for divorce in January of this year. So all of these messages have been since January?
What? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a.
Mr. Miller and Mrs. Miller filed for divorce in January of this year, January 18th. So all the messages
Yeah.
where he allegedly says that he's drinking and he's missing pickup, that was since January?
That was between June and September of 2022.
All right, so since they've separated.
Separated, yeah. I don't know what the relationship was at the time.
When did you and Miss Miller reconnect?
When she sent me Bubba's attendance when she was concerned about him.
And when roughly was that?
I'm not sure.
Has it been since their divorce? Or since they filed for divorce? So has it been since January?
Hold on. I don't know.
And Miss Amos, if you
I'll
don't
be
know,
able
it's
to-
okay. It's okay to say you don't know. I would much rather you answer I don't know than somehow lose connection. So if you don't remember, that's okay. Do you communicate with Miss Miller regularly now?
Sometimes if it depends on the. Sorry, my cat threw up. Because yeah, she was asking me a couple questions.
So how often
About-
would you say you talk to her?
Once or twice every 2 weeks. It just depends.
Do you normally communicate via messenger or text message or phone call?
Messenger.
So just to be clear, in these text messages or these messages that you have submitted, on the left-hand side, there are little pictures of people, their profile pictures?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. And the 8th chat down, that would be Miss Miller right there? When was the last time you talked to Miss Miller?
A couple days ago when she told me she had to withdraw due to a conflict and her divorce.
And prior to that, did you ask her to testify today, or did she ask you if she could testify today?
I asked her if she wanted to, and she said she would, but then then her attorney didn't recommend it.
Okay.
So
So
I
when
didn't
did
force her to testify.
And that's fine. When did she agree to be a witness for you?
I don't remember.
But she did submit some things that you've put into evidence. Those were directly from her.
Yes.
And did she make that declaration specifically for this case?
She did. She did because she wanted what was best for Bubba. She wanted for the best of Bubba. Because she hasn't seen Bubba since her and Michael separated. And she used to see him all the time.
So just so I understand, her way of getting to see Bubba was to help you get custody?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, that's why I'm trying to clarify. So
What do you mean?
So she said that she hasn't seen Bubba since
I
they
asked her-
decided to divorce.
Yeah, I asked her if she's seen him or not because she has access to his school stuff. And she told me no, she hasn't even seen him when she drops off and picks up her daughter, Michael and her daughter. And just what she told me, she hasn't seen him. But she wrote this just what was the best interest of Bubba. Like, this has nothing to do with like I don't know what you mean by your question.
Okay. I think you answered me without having to rephrase. Thank you, Ms. Amaskita. So in pulling up those text messages, I believe they are my exhibit number 11. There have been multiple instances where you have stated that you're looking into, and today you said that the lady finally got back to you yesterday about getting supervised visits for Buddy, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And
How
I
many
sent them,
times?
and
Go
I sent
ahead.
them to I sent them to Michael yesterday, but he's not read them.
And how many times have you, oh, I see your cat behind you. Is that, it's a very cute cat.
Oh, thanks.
How many times have you talked to Mr. Miller about planning and or scheduling and or looking into getting a supervised visitation set up?
A couple times. I told him I was calling places and I waited a couple weeks and I didn't hear anything and I tried calling them again. And I told him I got referred by a different place to call someone else to see if they would get back to me quicker, but they didn't call me back ever. And then finally I got a hold of Parents' Place and they called me yesterday.
And I was Mr. Miller's attorney during the DDPO protective order hearing against you. And if I remember correctly, during that hearing, you were asked if you would be okay doing supervised visitations with members of agreed upon third parties. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
And you said that no, you didn't want to do that. You'd rather do court appointed supervisors.
Yes, I'd rather do court appointed supervisors.
And what reason do you have for not wanting to use agreed upon third parties that you don't have to go through the court for and you don't have to pay for?
I don't see a reason why not to. We did that with my sister and it worked out okay.
You did court appointed supervisors with your sister and it worked out okay?
Yeah, when she went to visit my mom.
Okay. So, and again, I don't want to misstate what you're saying. So because it worked out with court appointed supervisors before with your sister and you saw it work with her and your mother, you did not want to do just supervised visitations with a non-court appointed supervisor.
I'd rather have it done by a court appointed supervisor. That way nothing is biased or unbiased or one way or another. I don't want someone who's one-sided. I'd rather have it be someone who's
Who's neutral.
yes.
Okay.
And I feel like if it was family or friends, it's not neutral.
Okay. Would you be amenable in the future, if anything gets modified in the future with the parenting plan, to having a guardian ad litem appointed?
Yeah, I would be fine. I've had a guardian ad litem before.
Right. And how has that worked for you?
Really well. I liked her a lot. She helped me through a lot of the stuff.
Okay. Now, Michael Miller's mother, I know that she helped raise you. Would you agree with that? When you were younger? Okay. And she said that you wouldn't want her to be that you would not want her to be an approved supervisor for supervised visitations.
Yeah. Just because she's family, I don't think it would be good because she would just be she'd be biased, not neutral.
Okay. When you say when you say that you think someone's going to be biased, what are you worried about them being biased about?
I'm worried about them making it to where I can't see my son because it's his family. They say they won't, but in the future, like, what if they change their mind and don't want me to? I just don't want that to be a biased thing. I don't want someone's family just like ganging up on me. So I want someone who's neutral.
who was the person who brought in Exhibit 1 the picture of Bubba with the marks on his arm? Who was it that brought that to your attention?
I don't remember. It happened 2 years ago. I'm not sure.
But you do remember it happening.
Yeah, I remember it happening.
And what was your reaction to seeing marks on Bubba?
I asked what happened and why he had them, and then when I was told what happened, I talked to Mike about it, and I talked to Michael about it, and then Michael Jr. and Michael Chaddock discussed it, and they were done with it.
Okay, so who is the person who told you about it?
I believe Mike and then Michael. They both messaged me about it.
Okay, and did what they say? Did they say kind of the same thing, or did they say something completely different about what happened?
No, they said the same thing.
Okay. Have you seen any more marks on Bubba since then?
No. Well, there was one time he came home saying Nikki slapped him in the face, but we didn't say anything because we didn't think it was.
And how long ago was that he said Nikki slapped him in the face? And that would be Nicole Miller.
Yeah, like a year ago. But it's
Did
not.
you talk? Okay. Did you talk to any other adults about what happened?
I only talked to Mike because Mike was the one that brought it up.
Mike Chaddock or Mike Miller?
Mike Chaddock. But he said that Bubba said that after he got dropped off.
Okay. Did anybody talk to Nikki or Nicole about that?
I don't remember.
So I'm clear, you don't remember if you talked to Nicole about your son alleging that she slapped him in the face.
Yeah, I don't remember talking about it to her. I think I might have talked to Michael about it or maybe mentioned it, but then he wasn't. I don't remember. It's been a year.
Okay. And how many times has Michael Miller been over to your house?
I don't know. Whenever he would message me that he's coming to pick up Bubba, he'd always message me when he's on his way over.
Okay. So how many times had he come over, would you say?
Once a week to get Bubba.
Once a week for how long?
What do you mean?
So like, would it be for 5 years, 3 years, once a week for 2 years? It was a pretty regular occurrence.
Yeah, I don't remember because for the first part of Bubba's life, he didn't take him for a little bit.
Okay. And have you ever told Michael Miller to leave before the October 8th incident?
No, just that day.
Okay. So up until that day, he had been welcome at your house.
Yeah.
And when he came over, did he usually wait? Where did he come?
He waited
inside?
outside the door.
Okay. So he wasn't just like in the driveway. He actually came to your front porch and waited.
Yes.
Okay.
Or he'd wait in his truck sometimes.
All right. All right. So you know that you had 2 prior CPS investigations before the October 8th incident.
Oh yeah, that's a different matter. That was when my mom was losing custody of my sister. She threatened the guardian ad litem and threatened Mike, and then her attorney had to withdraw. It's a big case. I would have to explain it, and I have all the messages and all the court documents from that.
Well, I haven't seen those particular documents. The 2 CPS investigations that I have seen are in what I submitted as Exhibit 13, and that is the incident. And so you are familiar with those 2 incidents.
I'm familiar with them, and I'm familiar with the other stuff because Ryan is the one that was with us at the time, and he was helping us like get that taken care of.
All right. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the 2 CPS investigations that are in Exhibit 13 are specifically addressing your sister Jordan, who lives with you. She lives with you, correct?
Yeah, I have guardianship of her.
Okay. She alleged that Mike Chaddock had strangled her and then locked her out of the house. And CPS investigated that allegation.
Yeah, and it was unfounded because in the further down, it said that it wasn't what happened.
And then the second CPS allegation that got investigated, that again was unfounded, was that CPS came to your house to investigate the matter that happened between Michael Miller and Michael Chaddock they came to your house to investigate the matter of Jordan alleging that Mr. Chaddock has strangled her. They came to your home and your son answered the door unattended. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then the next day they came back after we fixed the door. The lady who came back, we were working together to fix it, and we fixed the door, and then they said it was fine, and then they left.
Okay. But while they were there that first day, before they came back the second day, when they were there the first day, you had fallen asleep, and Michael Miller III was unattended. And you told CPS that you had taken some sleeping pills.
Yeah, I
Is
took
that
a Benadryl. Yeah, I took a Benadryl because I didn't feel good.
The report specifically said you took sleeping pills. So do you
I took a
count?
Benadryl.
Okay, so do you count Benadryl as a sleeping pill?
I guess.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have the same definition here. So if I'm saying sleeping pill and you're saying Benadryl, like Benadryl can help with sleeping. So I want to make sure when you're saying I took a sleeping pill, what you really meant was that you took a Benadryl.
Yeah, Benadryl.
Okay. All right. So you took a Benadryl and it knocked you out and you fell asleep.
Yeah.
And then CPS, they came inside your home and they saw that there was what was wrong with your door that needed to be fixed on that second visit?
It was the top lock. We took the top lock off and fixed it to where no one could unlock it.
Okay. So why was it messed up the first time?
Because earlier when you stated when you were asking my questions, Jordan broke it.
Do you know how she broke it?
She slammed the door because it was one of those chain deadbolts, and she slammed the door and it broke.
Has she broken any other doors?
Not that I know of. No.
And the day that so going back to the first allegation of Jordan made against Mike Chaddock, where she alleged that he strangled her. Did she ever change her story and say no, that didn't happen?
Yeah, she did. She's changed her story saying it didn't happen.
Does she tend to embellish the truth or lie a lot?
I'm not sure.
So she changed her story this particular time. And in the CPS report, it said that she was worried that she was going to have to end up in foster care. Have you ever heard your sister?
Yeah, she doesn't want to be in foster care because my mom did meth and then she didn't like our rules. So she would always she was a troubled teen and we were trying to help her.
So when the police came and they investigated the CPS report in your exhibit, what's marked as 3, so 103. In the, I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, maybe. There's a line that's marked through and it's redacted and it says 3B.
Yeah.
I'm assuming based on that redaction, that's Kirk.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Was your sister there that day when the police came and they talked to her?
I don't remember.
Okay. Does this sound about right to you then? Because I'm trying to read through the redactions. Amosquita said that she's had conversations about blank, about lying, but that blank laughs at her the entire time. Who were you talking about when that person lies?
Oh.
Is that Michael III?
Yeah, when I was talking about how he shouldn't lie to his teachers and how he shouldn't act the way he does, he would just sit there and laugh and giggle when I would talk to him about it.
Okay. And then above that paragraph, you can see that Amosquita said that Jordan usually watches the kids together when you're not home. Does that sound about right? Do Jordan and Mike watch the kids when you're not home?
Jordan doesn't watch them. Mike does. She would watch him if we ran to the store for like maybe 20 minutes, but she doesn't watch them.
Okay. So she watches them just a little bit, just not a long time.
No, just like to run to the store and run back, but she doesn't watch them.
So when you run to the store and you run back, there's nobody else.
That's like Safeway is just like 5 minutes from my house.
Okay, so when you leave the house, the kids aren't alone. She's there with them, but only for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So again, I'm assuming that 3B on the sentence above that one, Amosquita's blank, Jordan, I'm assuming it would say Sister Jordan, echoed similar sentiments stating she has never actually seen Chaddock get physical with the children. Okay. And just, I think we touched base on it earlier with Mr. Chaddock. Jordan has some mental health issues. Is that safe? Okay. Is she getting any kind of help for that?
I tried. She's a stubborn teenager. I can't force her to do something she doesn't want to do. And she's of age where she can make her own medical decisions.
Okay. So how old is she now? 16?
She'll be 17.
Do you know if she's in any kind of therapy?
I've tried. She doesn't want to right now at the moment. I know she's trying to get her GED right now, and I'm trying to help her with that.
All right. So if she's not getting her GED, she's not in a traditional school. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, she's trying to get her GED through the Goodwill.
Okay. And how long has Jordan lived in your home?
Off and on since the incident when she was placed with me.
How long ago?
I think 2020 or 2021.
And after she turns 18, do you think she'll still live with you in your home?
That's up to her. I don't know. I don't know. She's, I don't know how she thinks. She's her own person.
With some of her issues before, Mike Chaddock said that she will like grab glass and threaten to cut herself. Have you
Yeah,
ever
she doesn't
seen
do that. She doesn't do that anymore. She did that when she first came to my house because of how upset she was with everything going on with my mom.
Do
Because
you
my
or your
mom-
sister still have any kind of contact with your mother?
Minimal. I don't
So
talk
your
to her.
mom-
My sister will say hi to her, but that's about it.
So like, does your mom ever come to your house or anything?
No, she's not allowed at my house.
And again, in the investigation, CPS investigation in Exhibit 13, and along with Mike Chaddock's testimony, he said that he locked her room. Or explain what happens when she gets locked in or out of somewhere.
We have a back room that goes, okay, so we have the kitchen, there's a door to the back room, and then the door outside. We let her have the back room as a room. So we lock a deadbolt and put the deadbolt key up above the fridge so the kids cannot go into the back room out the back door because the back door cannot.
Okay.
It locks with the deadbolt.
So when Mike Chaddock in his testimony, he said that you locked her. I don't remember if he said locked in or out. You locked the door to her room.
Yes, he locked the door to her room so she could not get in her room. She could only stay in the main house. So she couldn't go in and get something out of her room. I don't know what it was.
And so when she made those allegations saying that Mike strangled her, threw her around, and locked her out of the house, do you believe any of that?
No,
Why not?
because I talked to her about it before and we've already had this discussion. I talked to the CPS worker and all that already.
Okay, and so Jordan made all of that up.
I guess, I don't know. She was scared. She was having a fit. I don't know.
And in the CPS report, I read that Jordan had stated that both her and Mike Chaddock have a temper.
Yeah, they disagree on stuff she does. She's a teenager that likes to do things that we don't agree on.
Okay, and what
She has
happens?
friends.
What happens when they disagree?
They argue a little, and then
What does that look like? So if we're arguing, or Mike and Jordan are arguing, what does that look like? Do they yell?
a little back and forth, and then they stop, and then they calm down, or she'll leave and go to her friends, and then
Is that an incident where a door would get slammed?
I don't know.
But you, in the CPS report that you've read and that I've submitted as evidence, you have read that she doesn't want to get kicked out of your home because she doesn't want to go back and live with your mom, and she also doesn't want to go to foster care.
Yeah. How is that relevant to now? Because that case was closed and she's already living with me.
I'm asking questions specifically related to anybody who lives in the home. How often is Bubba left when he was living there? Was he left unsupervised? Because you one time
Never.
the CPS came, you fell asleep.
The one time, but never.
Okay, so you have only fallen asleep at the house one time when Bubba was, and when he was unattended.
Yeah.
Are you aware that your mom thinks that Mike Chaddock and your sister have a weird relationship?
Yeah, we already discussed that. That's already been to court. That was already settled. That's something of the past. That's unrelated. We've already dealt with that before. My mom's crazy.
So you were aware of allegations made by.
Yep, I've dealt with the allegations.
So how did you deal with the allegations that your sister was sitting on Mike Chaddock's lap when she was 14 years old?
I talked to them about it and they said there was nothing going on. And I talked to the CPS worker. I talked to the police and everything was unfounded. And
When you said there's nothing going on, that means she wasn't sitting on his lap, or that means she
I don't
was?
know. I don't know.
I'm ready to move on from this topic.
All right, Your Honor. Last bit is whenever you turned over your exhibits for Bubba's school schedule, you turned over the dates after Michael Miller took custody. Were you aware of the dates before he took custody for like September?
I don't have access to his school stuff.
So you didn't have access to Wallace when he was going there?
No, I only went in and got paperwork from the school. I got locked out of my account. I don't have access to the account.
Okay, so the paperwork that you provided with the dates, it looks like an app. Is that an app that you provided to us?
It was a picture from Nicole of the Skyward app because I asked her if she had access to the account so I could see Bubba's attendance. So she sent me his attendance because I cannot log in.
All right. So when you got access and Nicole sent it to you, did you ask to see the whole school year?
That's what I had at the time. That's all I had. I didn't have the whole school year. I can't go to Lexington and get his stuff because of the protection order.
Did you ask Nicole to then send you more that included September from?
She couldn't log in.
So how did she get?
She got that And then when she tried logging in again, she couldn't log in again.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, the only picture that you got from Nicole that she sent you was what you've provided, which does not account for September of 2022. So she only provided you with the dates after Mr. Miller took custody.
Yeah, it only shows October 17th.
Do you know why you couldn't see before, why Miss Miller couldn't see before that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
All she did was send it to me and say that it was concerning that he missed that much school. And
Right.
then
And have you and Mr. Miller ever talked about putting Bubba on medication?
I actually went to his house when he had him. I dropped him off and I filled out the paperwork with him.
And what date
And
was
my
that?
sister was there. My sister was there. I don't remember the date, but it was before everything happened.
So it was before October of 2022.
Yes.
Okay. How long had you guys been talking about getting Bubba put on medication?
It was, I don't know, it was off and on because it was a touchy subject just because I didn't feel like he should be put on a big dose of medicine and I was afraid of what it would do to him. My cousin was on ADHD medicine and I know how it affected her. So I was kind of scared of what it would do to my son.
All right. And in the school records that I provided as exhibits, I noticed that there were certain dates where it said that you had excused Bubba from Wallace because he was in a bad mood.
Yeah, he wouldn't get out of bed and get dressed, or he was not in a good mood because he didn't want to go to school. And I asked them about it, and they told me I didn't have to take him to school if he didn't want to go. So I was okay.
And who did you
The
talk
school
to?
told me- I talked to the school principal and the school counselor.
Okay. And do you think that was partly due to his ADHD that he's now diagnosed for?
Maybe. I don't know how he's acting like now. I don't know how he is. I haven't seen him, so I don't know.
Okay. But that was why he was with you.
Yeah. Yes and no. Just him being a kid and not wanting to get out of bed early. And maybe his ADHD had a thing to do with it, but mostly just because he didn't want to wake up that early.
Right. And Mike Chaddock, previously and on the record and something, he had said that ADHD is an option but not a solution. Is that your opinion?
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
It's what Mike Chaddock had said previously. What were your conversations with Mike Chaddock about getting Bubba medicated?
His opinion on medicine is he doesn't like, unless it's needed, he doesn't want to use it. Like me, I don't want to put something in my son's body that I don't know what it will do to him. Like I get my kids shots, but I won't give them the flu vaccine.
So
like, I don't know. I was just scared what it would do.
okay. So if Bubba were to live with you again, would you still give him ADHD medication that he's prescribed now?
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I? Because I know what it can happen if he doesn't take his medicine.
And
There's
what
side
can
effects.
happen?
I know there's
Okay,
certain side effects.
So you said that you know what can happen if he doesn't take his medication. What can happen if he doesn't take his medication?
I know what medicine my cousin took. If she stopped taking it, she could have seizures.
And what medication was that?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I just knew that was one of the side effects that her parents talked about.
And was she being prescribed for ADHD?
Yes, she was for a while.
So if Bubba was back in your home and you were unable to administer the medication because you were working, would you trust that Mike Chaddock could?
Yeah,
And would he?
he would. Yeah.
And even if he thinks that Bubba doesn't need it, he would still give it to him.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. And what's your opinion based off of?
I had him help me take medicine when I needed it, and he didn't agree with it when I had my C-section because I couldn't get out of bed. I mean,
Mike Chaddock didn't want you taking medication after you had a C-section?
yeah, there was, okay, so I told him I did not want to take like oxycodones after my C-section. So I told him, don't like give me them unless I absolutely need them. I mean,
Okay.
What is your question? Like, I'm confused because like
My question is, you said that you were prescribed medication after you had a C-section.
yeah, and I can
And if
refuse to take medicine if I don't want
Okay,
it.
and if I'm not mistaken, I want to be sure that I'm clear on this. You said that Mike either didn't want you to take medication after you had a C-section or wouldn't give it to you after you had a C-section.
What do you mean? I told him I didn't want to take them.
So you told Mike that you didn't want to take them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so he didn't give you medication because you said, don't give me the medication.
Yes.
I don't have any more questions for Ms. Amosquita.
Ms. Amosquita, this would be your time to redirect, meaning any questions or other information that you had of yourself. So anything you want to cover that you forgot to cover, or anything you wanted to clarify.
No, I don't think so.
All right. And then do you have any other witnesses?
I do not.
All right. Any rebuttal witnesses, Ms. Boulder?
No.
And parties ready for closing arguments or statements?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could just take a 5-minute break. Your Honor, today you've heard evidence from my client, direct evidence from my client. You've heard it from both of his parents. You've seen the 13 exhibits I put forward and some of Ms. Amosquita's own exhibits. I don't know for sure what goes on in Ms. Amosquita's home. I don't know what goes on between her and Mike Shattuck, but based on pictures and CPS investigations, something is going on in the house. A 5-year-old, while they might, talk about Transformers and dinosaurs, for them to have marks on their arms or to have violent outbursts to the point where they're going half days of school because they can't be controlled because they're not using medication, or they're worried and scared to go back to their mother's home because they don't want to go back to bad Mike or evil Mike. It is not in the child's best interest to go back into that home. You also heard from my client and the 2 witnesses, and can read in the report that multiple people have said that since he has moved from Ms. Amosquita's home to Mr. Miller's home, he has done much better in school. He can go for full days now instead of half days. He is taking medication. He's finally medicated. He is going to doctor's visits. He is going into therapy. He is getting the attention that he deserves. I don't know what this boy, what this child has experienced and what he has seen, but as you heard from Mr. Chaddock on the record in Commissioner Nelson's court, he admitted that there is domestic violence in the home. He admitted that Angel had slapped him in the face and that he spit in her face in return. So that Bubba is spitting, he's hitting, he's seeing it from somewhere. And I know that we can say, oh, he probably watches YouTube. I mean, I think that Mr. Chaddock's own admission that, yeah, I grabbed his arm, I probably grabbed a little too hard, I didn't know I left a mark. And then to say, I talk about disciplining him. I don't treat him any differently than my own children. But then from his own admission, he says he treats him differently because it's not his child. I am extremely concerned that if Bubba was to go back into that home, that he wouldn't get the medication that he needs, that he is prescribed, because Mr. Chaddock might not believe that day in giving him medication because he doesn't need it. And based on the cross-examination of Mr. Chaddock, I am under the impression that he will say what he needs to say at any given moment. He doesn't give a direct answer. That's why I'm fairly certain that we can't say for certain what goes on at home, because the testimony will change. I'm concerned because you have a 16-year-old girl who also lives in the house with a history of mental illness, who has admitted to cutting herself, who was kicked indoors. The incident that happened on October 8th, I don't think either one of the Millers kicked in the door. I think either Mike Chaddock kicked in the door, or it was already kicked in from Jordan, because she has a habit of breaking locks. From the CPS investigations, there have been other allegations of Mike Chaddock using force, of allegedly strangling Jordan. And if she didn't, if that's not what happened, then we also have evidence that she changes her story because she's afraid to get kicked out of the home because she doesn't want to end up in foster care. There's also evidence in the CPS report that Ms. Amosquita did fall asleep while the child was unattended. And she says that it happened only once, but that was the only time she was caught falling asleep. And based on her own testimony, where she has, not been able to call Bubba because she has fallen asleep, I believe that she's probably really sleepy and she might leave her other children unattended. I don't know, but there are too many unknowns to leave a child in that environment. I just do not believe he is safe. Every time that he's asked about going back to his mother's house, he cries and says, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to Mike. He is finally in a situation now where he is getting the attention that he needs, where he is getting the medical treatment he needs. He's getting the therapy he needs. He's doing well in school. He still has the occasional outbursts and disciplinary issues, but it is a vast improvement from having multiple out of school suspensions. And I would say that putting him back in a home with Mike Chaddock, I mean, you heard it yourself that he doesn't know what's going on in the child's life, even though he says that he has a huge part of it and the child has been there for 5 years, yet he had no idea that the child had multiple out of school suspensions. I don't know how you account for that, either that he's just not paying attention or he's lying. And either way, I would not trust that a child will be safe in that home. Not to mention the fact that there are 2 domestic violence protective orders currently in place. One against Mike Chaddock, enforcing it against my client and my client's son. So there is a domestic violence protective order in place that says Bubba cannot be in the same home as Mike Chaddock. Then there's another domestic violence protective order in place against Miss Amosquita because Miss Amosquita cannot be trusted to not pick up her son from school and take him back to the house where Mike Chaddock is. She went to the school and picked him up at 10 o'clock in the morning, right after he had been dropped off by his father, because she knew, I need to see my son. This is the only time I have. I'm going to take him out of school, take him back to my house just so I can see him. That is an irresponsible decision for a parent to make. She has had the opportunity to have supervised visitations with non-court appointed supervisors. She has the opportunity to pick third parties, including my client's mother, who helped raise her, and other parties. She doesn't have to spend 2 to 3 months waiting to see her son because she can't get a hold of a court-appointed supervisor. I understand that that's what she would prefer to do, but if there's another alternative for her to be able to see her son, she has not taken that option. You heard lots of different evidence and seen exhibits from Nicole Miller, who chose not to testify today as she is involved in a divorce with Michael Miller. And her petitions that both I and Miss Amosquita have put into evidence, it went from, oh, best interest is to keep Mike Chaddock away from my stepson, to, oh, I think they should get 50-50 custody now. And she made that declaration after she filed for divorce. And then after Mr. Miller had his divorce petition, his response to the divorce petition, where he said, no, I don't want to split bank accounts with you. I'm going to split bank accounts with you. You can't have half my bank account. I don't want you to have to force a sale of the home and kick me and my other child out of the house. And you didn't get forced out of the house. You chose to keep having an affair. After he wrote those statements, 10 days later is when she wrote an incendiary declaration where for the first time ever, she alleged domestic violence. And so to me, and the reason she didn't appear today is because I personally don't think that she wanted to be questioned about her differing declarations and about her motives for wanting to take one side or the other. And the fact that she called my client the other day asking, what can I do to help you now? I just think there are too many unknowns in this case to really say that a child would be safe in an environment with someone who, quite frankly, is willing to do almost anything to be with their son. And I don't think that Miss Amosquita is a bad mother at all. I think she's just making a terrible decision by remaining in a house with somebody who was admitted to spitting on her, who has slapped her, who has there's weird accusations with the teenage sister. It's just too much. And I don't think a child should be in that environment. And I'm concerned for Miss Amosquita's own children that she has with Mike Chaddock. He's not going anywhere. Also, now that the CPS investigation has been found unfounded for the child abuse accusations against Bubba, he and Ms. Amosquita had the opportunity to file with the court to have that DVPO dropped. It is in the exhibit with the DVPO where Commissioner Nelson said, when the CPS report comes back, you can then file this to have the DVPO dropped. They haven't done that yet. Their remedy was to come and to try to change the parenting plan instead of just getting the DVPO dropped. I don't think they're serious about taking the necessary remedies to better the life of their child, and I just don't think it's a good environment for him. And for that reason, we would ask that the parenting plan that my client has proposed be the one that stopped it here.
All right, thank you. Ms. Amosquita?
Sorry, I might get a little emotional. I just feel like I just really want to see my son, and I've tried doing everything to see him. I've worked with CPS, I've worked with law enforcement, and CPS is the one that told me to go pick my son up from the school. I talked to the cop. He came to my house when Michael called the cops on me taking my son from school. He said I could have him. I wasn't breaking any laws. So that was the only time I had the cops come here and search my house to see if Mike was here. Mike was not here. The evidence is in her exhibits of him not being here. I've tried to be reasonable with Michael. I tried talking to him about everything. He's just so dead set on Mike being this abuser. And if I was with an abuser, I wouldn't be with them. I would leave the relationship instantly. If I was actually getting abused every fucking day, I wouldn't be with them. Sorry. And he's not abusing me. He's not abusing the kids. And all the CPS stuff that was brought up was when my mom and my sister and me were having to deal with that. That's something so unrelated to this. That is a different court case that happened that we just got done with Commissioner Nelson. He dealt with all that. And I've had to withdraw from school because of all this court stuff. I've almost lost my job. Mike lost his job because of this court stuff. I'm the only one working right now. And I've almost had to go to the doctor because of how depressed I've been because of CPS showing up at my doorstep every other weekend because of them being called and me working with them and telling them what's been happening. And I've tried everything. I've tried working with CPS. I've done everything I can. I tried getting the supervised visitations to Michael, but he hasn't read them. I just want it to be 50-50 and for me to see my son and we are going to try to get our protection order dropped. We just got the paperwork yesterday from CPS. Like, we filled out the paperwork already. We just have to turn it in because we got it yesterday and they were closed. I just want to, I'm sorry. I'm just really emotional about all this. Like, I've almost quit my job because I couldn't feel like going because I can't see my son. And like, everybody has been trying to help me as much as they can, and it's been so hard. I'm sorry. I think I'm done. I just hear him. I'm sorry.
No apologies. It's fine. I can't imagine how emotional this is. We are at a time when I'm probably not going to be able to. I was hoping to just give you an oral ruling. I don't know that we'll get there, but I frankly think there's some concerns and things that I want to address before we get there anyway. I'm really not sure how this case kind of went from requesting temporary orders to an MSC to trial without any temporary orders ever being entered. So we still don't have an active parenting plan. So this family doesn't have anything here entered. And now we have two different restraining orders. The first one, not to say that it isn't significant, and that would be the one against Mr. Chaddock, but frankly, didn't have to impact the entry of a temporary parenting plan. So and that was never done. And I'm sorry that didn't happen. I don't know why that is the case. We really, frankly, have young people here that are raising even younger people and allowing drama to get in the way. The history amongst, frankly, all the people, and I'm going to take Mr. Chaddock out of this situation. I don't know Miss, is it Nicole Miller? Nick. Clearly, all three grew up together. Miss Amaskita has been kind of integrated into Mr. Miller's family from a young age. We were together for a very extended period of time. It's frankly a little concerning to me that Miss Amaskita chose to just not see her son, then trust folks that she lived with for an extended period of time, even after not being in a relationship with Mr. Miller. You want to see your son, you see your son, and you do it whatever way possible. I wouldn't wait. And that's kind of concerning. There's a lot of different accusations. I wish there was a GAL in this case. Someone from a neutral standpoint. Frankly, I think every single person associated with Bubba needs to take parenting classes, love and logic, something along those lines. Miss Amaskita has had a lot thrown at her. She's raising a younger sibling, had to deal with a situation with her mother that sounds, from what little I could glean from that, sounds like a traumatic and upsetting situation. Her younger sister is still dealing with that. I'm not going to hold that against Miss Amaskita because she's chosen to do probably the most adult thing in this entire situation and step up and try to raise her child. But clearly not everyone here is always making good decisions. I don't know at what point, clearly the accusations against Mr. Chaddock were the dividing point between these parents being able to work with each other and not being able to work with each other. I'm concerned about some of the text messages or messages, frankly, from all parties. There's accusations being thrown around. I don't know if any people in this situation, including Miss Nicole Miller, understand the seriousness of filing declarations under penalty of perjury in court and changing your mind just because you're upset at somebody. And that doesn't go just to her, it goes to everyone here. And protection orders aren't always the answer to solve these problems. So I'm a little bit at a loss here because it seems like there was some cooperation and that just disappeared. And I'm not, other than the accusation against Mr. Chaddock, I don't know how that all fell apart. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to enter on a temporary basis because I want some evaluations to take place. So I want a DV evaluation to be done by a Washington State certified evaluator for both the petitioner and the respondent, and Mr. Chaddock, if he's going to remain an active member in Ms. Amaskita's household, which I can assume that he is, given that they have children together. Both protection orders allow for some contact as far as if family law case allows it. So I am going to allow for supervised or unsupervised, unprofessional supervised visitation. But I'm going to want that visitation supervised. We have a young child who, as resilient as children are, is seemingly in a very stable place currently. And I think the fact that he hasn't seen his mom and still there's some indications of trauma associated with seeing mom, I think we need to start with supervised visitation. So, and if Miss Amaskita is okay with paternal grandmother, she seemed frankly like a very neutral party to me in her testimony and how she came across. If that's not acceptable to her, then Mr. Miller, you need to work with getting those visitations set up professionally. It sounds like she's already sent you some dates and times. I don't care if you're working, someone else can get the child to those places where they need to be. And I want that to start as soon as possible. So please respond to that and let's get those set up. Are the parties available? I don't expect the DV things to be done by the time I'm setting a review here, but essentially I'd like to enter some orders, some temporary orders, and await the results of some of these other evaluations. One second, the 9th at 8:45. That's a Friday. Miss Amaskita, it sounds like there's dates available before the 9th for you to get a visitation in.
Yeah, they said Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
Between 10 and 1 is when I can do them, but I'd have to have Michael get in contact with me.
Okay. And you have access to each other through the parenting app, so I'm ordering that to take place. And if they have visitation, and I think there was a number of hours that were allotted in the order for visitation, so we'll stick with that now. And then I'm going to craft essentially a temporary plan that will enter until we get those evaluations back, and then I'll enter a full plan.
Your Honor, are you going to enter that temporary plan on the 9th at 8:45?
That's my hope. Yes.
Okay. And until then, how would you?
Until then, supervised visitation, communication through the parenting app, and start working on getting those evaluations set up. I'd also like you to start working on getting signed up for a parenting class. Love and Logic is the first one that comes to mind. So
okay, Love and Logic.
Love and Logic is, and I think it's online currently.
Okay.
But I think everybody needs to take that kind of a class. So I'm going to just say Love and Logic. And if there's any concerns with finding that, I don't know if Ms. Holder, if you have connections to that, and Ms. Amaskita, if there can be any assistance, but if one of you finds it, and please share it with the other. So we just get this.
I can check with my office staff. I'm sure we have those resources.
All right. And then we'll come back. So we're taking baby steps here is what's happening. So the 9th at 8:45, and I will have at that point a temporary plan that I'll go through with everyone and we'll enter.
Okay. Is there a paper that, like, when you do the parenting class, is there a paper you turn in?
Usually they give you a certificate, and if you want to file that, that's probably a great idea.
Okay.
All right.
And all parties will pay for their own parenting classes?
Yes. So that's on each person.
Okay. That's fine.
All right. And then I'm not even considering child support currently. We'll get there when we get there. I feel like, frankly, this case kind of powered through the system quicker than I would have liked to seen. I'm glad that we're closer to getting a resolution, but I wish there's some other resources that were applied to this case that I think, frankly, could have helped everyone. So that's how we're going to move forward. So we'll see everyone back next Friday, 8:45 a.m. That will be on Zoom. So just look for it on a Zoom link.